When the final moonlight of 183 BC slanted into the humble wooden cabin by the Bithynian shore, the air was imbued with a faint tang of sea salt and the grounding scent of myrrh. Outside, Roman pursuers had already tightened their silent noose under the veil of night, yet inside, the one-eyed patriarch betrayed not a flicker of panic. Seated before a wavering candle, he traced with his fingertips the rusted edge of a dagger adorned with Carthaginian motifs, his gaze piercing through the dancing flames as if returning to the storm-swept summits of the Alps. This was Hannibal Barca, the god of war who once forced the gates of Rome to shut in a tremor of terror and turned the Mediterranean into a theater of his will. He had once commanded the very zenith of ancient tactics, yet in his waning years, he chose the obscurity of a corner, becoming a solitary tutor of philosophy. What we seek to recover today is the Hannibal lost beneath the iron-blooded epics, the man at his most composed and serene. The deepest rift in Hannibal's soul was carved long ago, during a sacrificial rite thick with blood and incantations in his youth. Carthage was then swathed in the gloom of defeat, and his father, Hamilcar, poured a lifetime of resentment and expectation into the veins of the 9-year-old boy. Amidst the rising mists of incense, the oath he swore weighed as heavy as mountains. At 29, leading a motley host of Numidian cavalry and 37 African elephants, he stepped resolutely into the deathly shadows of the Alps. Beside the glacial rifts, he saw not the banners of triumph, but the calcified husks of thousands of soldiers frozen into stone. When the final elephant collapsed upon the snowline, letting out a long, mournful cry of starvation, it became a tremor in Hannibal's heart that would never be stilled. He exhorted himself, "You must be as cold and unyielding as these peaks to carry the searing heat of this vendetta." The staggering brilliance of the Battle of Cannae thrust him into a 16-year quagmire of war. He wandered the sun-drenched plains of southern Italy, each victory a fresh laceration upon the heart of Rome, yet he could never quite deliver the coup de grace to that Leviathan. During these years, Hannibal gradually transformed from a triumphant conqueror into a wanderer forsaken by his own homeland. He grew accustomed to studying Euclidean geometry in the dead of night and deducing the shifts of geopolitics through the constellations. He discovered that the more intimately he knew his enemy, the more he felt a poignant, kindred solitude. Staring at the distant flickers of Rome's lights, he once sighed, "Had fate allowed us to meet in a study rather than upon a battlefield, what composed years those would have been." He waited for reinforcements from the Carthaginian Senate that would never arrive. This lucidity brought a bone-chilling frost to his hand every time he gripped his sword. The settling dust of the Battle of Zama signaled that Hannibal's dream of rejuvenating his fatherland had shattered upon the red earth of North Africa. Returning in defeat to Carthage, he was met not with solace, but with the sharp ostracization and suspicion of his compatriots. He threw himself into internal reforms, attempting to dredge the stagnant channels of a corrupt bureaucracy, but a ruling class bred on venality did not welcome an incorruptible legend. When Rome's demand for his extradition descended like a shadow, Hannibal chose an endless exile at sea. He drifted between foreign ports, offering monarchs grand strategic blueprints, only to see reality collapse time and again at the moment of reckoning due to the cowardice of his allies. These recursive failures taught him to converse with philosophers of the soul. He realized that whether it be the blood of Cannae or the machinations of power, all would eventually dissolve into the boundless respiration of the ether. This expansiveness, this seeing through the rise and fall of empires, became the armor with which he faced his fate. Hannibal's final days transpired within a rhythm of profound solemnity and peace. In his Bithynian villa, he was no longer a commander-in-chief, but a sage instructing the youth in rhetoric and the elders in astronomy. Gaunt and fragile, his remaining left eye no longer harbored the glint of slaughter, instead, it was a deep well of compassion. Watching the encroaching Roman envoys, he felt only a fatherly resignation. He understood that he, the original antagonist, had fulfilled his destiny as the whetstone that sharpened Rome into an empire. On his final day, he calmly retrieved the poison and smiled at his attendants. "Let us put an end to this long labor." In that moment, the roar of the Mediterranean surf merged with the remembered winds of the Alps, carrying away the god of war's final sigh. He bequeathed a dignity that remains searingly hot across 2 millennia, commencing his true immortality within the echoes of history. The story of Hannibal Barca draws to a close amidst the receding tides of the Bithynian harbor.
We are accustomed to worshipping the general who executed the god, like pincer movement at Cannae, yet we too easily overlook the mortal man who, under a lonely lamp, shook hands with destiny.
He was never a demon born for destruction. He was an exhausted soul who steadfastly refused to bow to mediocrity. He teaches us that regardless of whether your end aligns with worldly success, the composure and reconciliation found within the self are your only eternal home. Perhaps you, too, are navigating the uncertainties of life today. But believe this, in every life, there exists a personal Alps, a silent space reserved only for a dialogue with one's soul. May the serenity and vastness of Hannibal guide you toward the most tranquil shores of your inner self.
Gott nicht, and may sweet dreams attend you.